And thank you, Shay, for that wonderful backstage preview of what goes on, just for everyone to get a chance to see what's actually happening alongside us. I'm Alex Dow. I'm now joined by the Joe Bernard. How you doing, my friend?
Yeah, I'm doing really good. I've had the first couple of rounds off, so I've been able to wander the tables a little bit, get involved in the action and seeing the top tables. We had a ton of mirror matches off-stream in the last round. There's a couple of Mew mirrors towards the top tables, a Lugia mirror where Tord was able to come out on top, and also a Gudra mirror on the top tables. So that gives you a good little insight into what's at the top right now.
Yeah, we've highlighted it with Ross a moment ago as well, just how Lost Gudra seems to have been, coming to the fore and finding its place in the meta and a lot more. Had a bit of a spike in popularity, which is cool to see. Of course, we've seen it a few times already now with Stefan Ivanov also playing it, and also in our day 2 bracket as well. Not bracket, but day 2 Swiss as well. But we will be showing you now, as I mentioned a moment ago, our day 2 meta breakdown.
You can see that Gudra, there's actually 10 of them in our day 2. So just behind Lugia and Mew, which is absolutely unheard of, and taking a lot of that regular lost box percentage. A lot of those single prize builds aren't doing quite so well this weekend. There's also a good amount of the Reggies still up and around those top tables, as well as Arceus Duraludon. So a decent slice of the pie we already know quite well. It's just really that big percentage being taken up by the Hisuian Gudra. Not a lot of Vikavolt. I think that's pretty much to be expected, as Gudra does very well. That's quite a difficult matchup. But also we have seen a lot, and we've managed to get a lot of them on stream, actually. Some really interesting decks in there. There's the Wheezing Lugia. There's the Flaffy Box that's still doing very well, by the way. I think I saw it winning in the previous rounds. And some various different builds of Arceus still sticking around. Yeah,
I didn't quite realize there's actually seems to be 2 Flaffy Box floating around alongside Jimmy. There's another player playing it as well. Going further down the list, there's another card there that we've seen Sander put to fantastic placements. That Mewtwo v Union finding a place in our day 2 as well. And I'm assuming the more control variant than necessarily the attacking taking prize version that Sander has played previously. But fantastic to see that concept still also taking and finding a spot here in our day 2 meta.
Yeah, Sander likes to keep things fresh. He doesn't like to play the same deck over and over again, but that's not to say that Mewtwo v Union isn't still a great choice. You still have the Cry of Destruction Yveltal being so powerful against Lugia players and against Mew players. It's such a solid win condition against, as we just saw, 2 of the most popular decks in day 2. So it still has that fantastic build around that sort of keeps you afloat. And then against some of the lower damage output decks, the Mewtwo v Union can still be a huge threat.
Yeah, it's really cool to actually see. And of course, seeing things like the Lost Box decks, there's a lot of variation that we saw in day 1 around that as well. But just got news in that our players for our round 12 feature match is actually setting up right now. We've got a fantastic matchup, a deck we haven't yet seen on stream, piloted by Bernardo Diaz on our right-hand side there, and he'll be up against Julian Kretunud on our left-hand side, just double-checking exactly his matchup here as well.
Well, I'm really excited for this one because Bernardo is one of those tiny slithers in day 2. He is going to be playing the Arceus Inteleon with the single strike Beedrill Mustard package, and he even has Fire Energy in his deck list for Radiant Charizard. So he has the sort of go-between of can use the chunky 2 prize Pokemon or can try and weave in some single prizes, and it looks like he's up against another Arceus variant.
Yeah, that Arceus Duraludon VMAX as well. Just having a quick look at that list, there's actually quite a few different cards in it, as we do see the Duraludon V there in his prizes, and the Beedrill in Bernardo's side. That vital card to sort of keep an eye out on as we do progress and move into game 1, as both players have finally set up, and we'll see them kicking things off shortly as well. Both players on an 8-2-1 record. That Arc Duraludon, just wanted to highlight as well, it's not just the Arc Duraludon that we've seen. It's similar to what we saw in Bochum, where there was Flying Pikachu involved in the deck as well. Yeah,
definitely more of a toolbox going on here. So both these players have found very creative ways of doing well at the tournament, where there is one Duraludon, well, a 1-1 line, I should say, a 2-2 Flying Pikachu, as well as a 1-1 Aerodactyl and some Drapion V. So trying to be that Arceus toolbox. So Both players trying to counter the meta in one way or another, and doing it in quite different ways, as Bernardo gets the attachment onto Arceus V, which is pretty solid.
Yeah, I think that was a Julian turn one, not doing too much. It was just an air
pass.
balloon. This is a really sticky position.
Yeah, it looks like there's Ultra Ball, and that normally means Starbirth, which means it's probably game here.
Yeah, because I think I saw a scoop up net in Bernardo's hand as well. We were just discussing a little bit about the decks, and with just 2 turns, it looks like that could be a very quick turn one, as there's the handshake, and Bernardo with a wild smile there, taking game 1 in quick procession.
Yeah, it doesn't get easier than that, and that's actually such low odds for Julian, to be honest, because he plays a huge number of basic Pokemon and is playing the full 4 copies of Quick Ball and Ultra Ball, so that is one of those things that will happen once in a blue moon, but Bernardo's going to take that. Got to be happy. You're not going to see an easier start. You didn't see much from your opponent's deck, but as soon as you do see that Crobat, it means you're not going to be up against Mew. It means you're unlikely to be up against Lugia, I would say. Very unlikely to be against Lost Zone box as well. So I think he can eliminate some decks whilst also, only seeing 2 cards from his opponent's deck list. He gets that little bit of information as well, so it couldn't have gone better for him.
Yeah, only seeing 2 cards and seeing a lot more of us 2 on the on the screen as both players are now beginning to hopefully set up for game 2 and hopefully get a bit more of a back and forth. I mean, when you're an Arceus player, you are looking to go first and try and get that Arceus down and that energy attachment to really start Trinity charging or Trinity Novaing to your sort of variety of attackers in a similar way that we've seen with Mirage Gate, being able to pull energies out of those decks. And we've seen Arceus being partnered with so many different Pokemon. This is why we're seeing 2 different types of Arceus decks now. And I really hope Julian gets a chance to actually showcase why he's currently 8-2-1 as we do go back to our players now. So let's hope for a bit more of an exciting game 2 as our prizes are being placed out now as well.
Yeah, you've got to just sort of shake that one off. And ooh, a lot of basic energy going into those prize cards. He actually doesn't play that many. I believe it's 9 basic in total. And already 4 of them in those prizes is quite awkward for Julian once again. He at least has turn attachment to his Arceus V, and really this is a deck that isn't on paper that consistent, but it all comes together very nicely thanks to the Starbirth. So it's so important to get the early Arceus V down. It goes without saying. But it looks like, once again, that Crobat has found its way into the active position, which is not fantastic. However, Julian can try and use his Aerodactyl V-Star. It's a great way at slowing down Lugia, but it can actually be a threat in Arc mirror match situations, because you can be threatening weakness, and that's exactly what's coming to the top of his deck here during his opening search. He wants to make sure he can tell what he has access to. He does play a low counter fighting energy, just 2 energy, but that should be enough to get into the mix here, because of course he's not only utilizing that Aerodactyl V-Star, he also uses Duraludon, which also requires that fighting energy.
Yeah, it's fantastic to see, like, as you very highly recommended there as well, using that fighting Pokemon to sort of combat some of these mirror matches. We saw it, of course, come to the fruition for someone like Andre in the World Championships, where he had the Arceus sort of toolbox deck himself, the ADP, the Decidueye being the fighting Pokemon in that respect, and just taking out other Arceus, because, given that consistency of the card, we saw how powerful it is. It's taken a bit of a back step recently because of some of the more inherently quicker, powerful decks like Lugia and Mew just always being around, but always seems to find a place at points. And here we are yet again seeing 2 Arceus decks, which is amazing to see. But yeah, that Crobat V is not looking in too happy of a spot in the active spot.
Yeah, it's a little bit awkward. Julian does play 2 copies of Collapse Stadium, so maybe at some point he can go wide enough to remove it from play. But until then, it's going to be an easy 2 prize pickup at some point during the game for Bernardo, who's got a decent start themselves. They have access to Quick Ball and can start getting their Sobble into play. That Inteleon engine has been paired with Arceus for a good amount of time. It's just sort of not been that prevalent in the format, but we know this is a very strong combination of cards. You have the early game Starbirth for consistency, and then you can shady deal your way throughout that game. And it looks like we've seen some hand mapping, and already a Beedrill hitting the discard pile. getting that low hand size. Is there a way we can get down to the mustard? Turn one, single strike mustard. You love to see it.
Yeah, amazing to see. This is a fantastic card, which, you know, it pays homage to some cards in previous formats as well. But single strike mustard, you can play this card only when it's your last card in your hand. Search your deck for a single strike Pokemon, which the Beedrill is. Doesn't matter if it's at the stage 2, of course, and put it onto your bench, then shuffle your deck, and you still get to draw 5 cards as well. Does also get the other Arceus V down, so he has a target for Trinity Charge. So a really strong turn here from Bernardo, and just threatens that poor Arceus V on Julian's side of the board with that Beedrill.
Yeah, Julian really can't avoid using his Arceus next turn, so it will play into the hands of Beedrill in its Persist Sting attack for just 1 grass energy. Looks like Bernardo wasn't able to find any additional Sobble from his 5 cards with the Mustard, so it is just going to be a Trinity Charge here, powering up his active Arceus V as well as 2 onto the bench. So he's got a real huge number of threats already developed on his board here.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see this kind of almost innovation. We've seen this Arceus Beedrill kind of type lists come to formats and metas and regional tournaments before, but being able to bring it to essentially the last tournament of this format in the EU and still showcase how Beedrill has a place, should have a place in the meta, because all of these special energies that are flying around, particularly with things like Lugia, of Arceus, of course. Duraludon still has a way of actually still having DTs in the deck as well for other Arceuses, as we do see the Starbirth here being used now.
I wonder if Big Parasol is going to be a card on Julian's radar here, because that's one way to protect yourself from a Persist Sting. I think that's a contributing factor as to why Beedrill is slightly less popular. Now, Bernardo's still finding a way to make it work, because Lugia typically doesn't play many Big Parasols, so you can still cash in there. And Mew players typically only use 1 copy, so you're still getting a lot of value from that Beedrill. But in this case, Julian can have the answer.
Yeah, Bernardo, of course, with his own Starbirth and his own Shady Dealings, does have access to Lost Vacuum as well.
A bit of a back and forth.
Yeah, let's see how this is going to swing. I'm really excited to see how it's going to play out, because we do see the Aerodactyl V-Star now on the board as well. He does have that additional target for that Trinity Nova attack. Hopefully coming up soon. I think that's an escape rope.
Looks like just an escape rope. Yeah, he's got to move his Crobat out the way, and also gets the benefit of forcing a different Pokemon into the active position. Bernardo chooses his other Arceus V, and it will be a fresh 7 cards here. Julian wasn't able to just go for an energy. He would be left with basically no cards in hand, so had to use the research. Fortunately, does find energy, but I don't see the Big Parasol here. That would have been a huge pickup for him, and he's not drawn into it.
Yeah, a bit of a big miss here, because that means that Arceus V-Star could very easily go down to that Persist Sting, and Bernardo must be eyeing that up as an option here if he's not able to draw into it, if there's any other way, which doesn't look like there's no other Crobat
the 1
in
copy
the
of Crobat, which he happened to start again in this game. Things just haven't come together for Julian. I wonder if he'll try and develop another attacker here. Duraludon could have some benefits. Of course, that is a double turbo energy on the benched Arceus V now. And you're also denying potential Sharon's Care plays. If you're stopping the opponent from attaching their double turbos and getting value out of those, you make it much more difficult to weave in Sharon's Care, which, you know, Bernardo's playing a bit of a throwback. We've seen this, you know, almost a few formats ago. And Bernardo really bringing it back. So you really have to go through your memory banks and figure out what cards are in Bernardo's list on the job here.
Yeah, not necessarily something that has gone full defensive either. No. It's just a 1 copy of Sharon's Care. You know, we've already seen it once this weekend in a Lugia list, which is really cool. Another innovative way of being able to sort of utilize tech cards. But here we do see the Trinity Nova with the power-up of 2 basic energies. I don't know if he has access to any more.
So many of them. Yeah, he's priced 4 energy. This is just so unfortunate for Julian.
It's just the 2 that is actually available in his deck, which means that theoretically that Aerodactyl, if it needs 1 more attachment to be able to use Lost Dive, would have to be a DTE, which means also that Beedrill will threaten that as well.
Yeah, that would be a horrible situation. You have to feel like Bernardo's going to look to use Persist Sting, cash in while he can, makes life difficult for Julian. You have this really threatening 1-prize Pokemon that Julian essentially can't ignore. It's a great way for Bernardo to get an easy up trade here, when the rest of his deck, it's far less aggressive. Its only other means of getting real 1-hit KOs onto V-Star Pokemon is using a late-game Radiant Charizard alongside the likes of Choice Belt.
Yeah, and he's got a nice, unique way. He's got Shady Dealings in hand, as well as the Evo Incense right now, likely pulling the Arceus V-Star, so he has access to the Starbirth when he needs it to right now. He doesn't actually have to use it. He could save it for later turns as well, because if with shady dealings, if he does retreat, but he chooses to do so, if he does retreat, he could pick up a Trainer's Court and get that grass energy onto the Beedrill. But it looks like he's opting for Sharon's Care.
It's interesting. It can be a way for him to actually access grass energy immediately, because he'll be picking it up, promotes the Beedrill and simply get a turn attachment in on that. It does make you a little bit vulnerable if Julian then could gust up the Arceus V-Star, the only Pokemon with energy outside of the Beedrill. Bernardo's not to know that there aren't basic energy still in Julian's hand. That could still be a possibility that Bernardo's thinking of, and that would be quite detrimental for Bernardo, although he can actually spring back from a zero energy board state with the help of Melanie, so that could still be worth the risk here. He's going to try and buy back a turn of damage with the Sharon's Care. Yeah,
I suppose you wouldn't really want to be given access for Julian to a training court. You know, that would be one of those metal energies straight back into hand. I mean, also the energies that are already in the discarded
Interesting.
side.
We're going for the Arceus V-Star instead and keeping up on energy across the board in a different way here.
Yeah, I mean, it's one way, like you said, would you want to be maximizing the value of your Beedrill now? It does get the Dunsparce down.
I think that's a big reason why we're seeing a slower approach from Bernardo. Even though it's one Sharon's Care, there's also a Pal Pad, so he can continue to undo damage from Julian here, who just doesn't seem prepared for this type of deck, because why would you be?
No, exactly that, and that war of attrition that could come into play here because of that Sharon's Care just means Bernardo's just in a favorable position. If he can get that Pal Pad going, of course, does have that Drizzle already on the bench, you know, could be evolved into that big shady Inteleon to grab 2 trainer cards on his turn. Does look like he might have it in hand or
the last basic energy for Julian, and then it's a Serena here, going to be used for draw. Ooh, discarding 2 V Pokemon to see an additional 5 cards here.
On Julian's side, would you have ever considered maybe just targeting down that scary Beedrill on the bench?
Well, the Serena's only for the...
I just meant in general, if the option was available.
He'd love to. Yeah? Trust me, I'm sure he'd love to right now, because it is a huge issue. But in this 2-hit KO war, I feel like Bernardo's already one-upping Julian by undoing that first turn of Trinity Nova.
Yeah, so Julian a little bit on the back foot here. Looks like he's Evo Incense for that Duraludon VMAX as well. He of course does have the Duraludon V already on the bench. Won't be able to power it up. Yeah, I don't believe.
And the jig will be up as soon as Julian chooses to attack with Arceus V-Star this turn. He may even pay retreat into the Aerodactyl to try and make life more difficult for Bernardo. Of course, when you're forcing Gust to finish off a Pokemon, you're then denying the use of Sharon's Care, so that could be going through Julian's mind, but he really doesn't have many other attackers throughout the game because he's so restricted by his prize cards right now.
Yeah, all those resources just not sitting well for Julian right now. Bernardo just in a commanding spot. Of course, we have Caster View. You know, Bernardo does not have that access to information that we do, but Julian's, you know, body language probably isn't ideal either, just having to announce the Trinity Nova, go through the deck, and this is the point where Bernardo eyes might open up.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be pleased with that if you're Bernardo. You're a game up. Your opponent's already got a Crobat in play. Yeah, you're sort of ahead in attacks right now. And Bernardo's also going to look through the discard pile and say, you've got to be playing more than this.
Hang on, there's only 1 in the discard. Yeah. That's telling me a lot.
And there's basically no reason for Julian to wait on this. He would certainly try and power up his Duraludon if possible. So this is a big break for Bernardo.
Yeah, it's just sometimes you just got to grasp this kind of level of variance that's given or going your way with both hands. And, you know, here it is, big shady dealings with that Inteleon coming down. Now just getting any piece of the puzzle that he wants. It looks like he's eyeing up another Arceus V-Star maybe, because there's still just the Arceus V on the bench. The Evo Incense coming to the front of the deck. Just double checking what else he has access to as well. The Pal Pad should still be in there as an option. Yep. Maybe looking to, set up the board with additional Sobbles, maybe a scoop up nets to then start beginning those shady deal chaining where possible.
Yeah, it honestly feels like he's got everything he needs for this turn already. He's quite content simply just attacking into the active if need be. So continue to develop your board, put yourself in a situation where you can't be hand disrupted so easily, and make sure you don't lose a beat of tempo because he's pretty far ahead right now.
Yeah, and Bernardo, both players there just cracking a bit of a laugh between one another. I'm sure there's plenty of respect there, and knowing that Julian's just kind of up against the wall in this scenario, unfortunately, for him, as Bernardo does make that water attachment to the bench Arceus V as well. And just the announcement of the attack.
Yep.
Doesn't necessarily look to charge up a Pokemon. Maybe, I guess, with sometimes you actually do need to shuffle that, but it doesn't really matter in too much respect. But yeah, the gameplay.
I think he just shuffled the deck from ball search effects anyway, so we're all good in that sense. It is completely randomized right now, even without the shuffle from the attack itself. We pass back over to Julian, who has his last stand with Aerodactyl. We're going to see a boss's orders to kick things off, and it is going to be the Arceus V on the bench. So he can, even without weakness, get a knockout at least here.
So looking to take 2 prizes here with that Lost Dive, dealing 240 damage. We'll have to Lost Zone a few cards. So top 3 cards in your deck go to the Lost Zone. So let's see what hits it. There's a Marnie, a Flying Pikachu, oh, VMAX, sorry, and the boss.
That's actually really awkward. It's funny, you would think that with so many cards that are matchup dependent, you'd be quite happy every now and then Lost Zoning a few, but hitting 2 of your supporters is a real issue here. So yeah, quite awkward once again. Bernardo promotes his Beedrill to start off the turn. There aren't any special energy in play right now.
Aerodactyl's weak to grass.
Yep.
So Beedrill does have a second
choice
attack.
Belts? Oh my goodness.
Jet Spear for 140. Discard an energy from this Pokemon.
That is crazy.
But ×2 with the weakness. Bernardo having every answer to Julian's board. And there's just
Julian
no
has
energy.
no more attackers. All of his remaining colored energy are in the prize cards. He only has double turbos remaining in his deck. He has to try and slow attach his way to an Arceus, knowing that his opponent at any point can simply shady deal their way to a boss. So he needs to try and find a turn attachment alongside hand disruption. That's his only solution here.
There we go. More choruses, more cards going into the Lost Zone from Julian's side as well. Chorus, as we mentioned yesterday, a card that's great utility for a lot of cards, a lot of decks to be able to see 5.
Parasol's huge here.
Yeah.
That could be a way that you could attach to your Arceus on the bench, knowing that you're playing around the Persist Sting. Because, like we say, oh wow, the big Parasol hits the Lost Zone instead here, as well as Professor's Research. At least he's got a Marnie for the following turn. But I feel like the big Parasol is one of your best defense mechanisms here.
Yeah.
If you simply bench and attach to an Arceus, you are very vulnerable to simply a Gust and another Grass Energy.
Yeah, in really sticky position. And Bernardo only really needs to target down that benched Crobat V for the final 2 prizes as well.
Yep, another route to victory.
He's just got to do everything that he can right now. You know, that Crobat can't really get additional HP from this position.
Both collapsed stadiums have already hit the discard pile for Julian this game. There's not even a way of removing the Crobat from play. So as you say, Bernardo is looking like he's pretty locked up, especially with the support he used for Julian here. It doesn't seem like he can stop the fact that Bernardo has access to a shady dealing next turn for, like you say, the game-winning boss's orders. So seems like there's been a breeze for Bernardo this game, strutting his stuff and using Beedrill, not in the way that we earlier discussed, actually using it for the Jet Spear. That was exciting to see.
Yeah, I was eyeing it up a little bit earlier as well, because it's another way of maybe trading with some single prizes as well. Dealing 110 damage is a pretty good number. We see it with Cramorant, of course.
Straight away, the boss's orders. He can elect for the Crobat and attack with his Arceus V-Star. And again, a real breezy game. I don't think Bernardo's had it easier so far today, and that's no slight on Julian. It's just the cards did not land for him at all, and Bernardo is taking that like a champ. He's very happy with himself. His deck is very creative, and around him, among those top tables, there are a lot of archetypes with special energy. Lots of Mew around him, lots of Lugia, so I'm sure he's going to see more value out of that Beedrill in the rounds to come. Yeah,
100%. Bernardo is sort of taking just a easy sort of routine win for his deck now and putting himself into a 9-2-1 record. So 1 win away from potentially navigating himself into that top 8. Julian still, of course, in contention, 8-3-1 now, I believe. So we'll need to sort of win his final 2 rounds.
If he wins the final 2 rounds, he might be able to squeak in with 31. We don't know just yet. We haven't done the full calculations, but he's not completely out of the race. And it's good to see, because Arceus is one of the more creative decks out there, and we didn't get to demonstrate it. You know, when you come up against another sort of counter-style deck, things get a little bit sticky. You don't really go into this tournament thinking, how's my matchup up against Beedrill Arceus? That's not why he developed his deck. That's not why the techs are in there. And that's why he had a bit of a hard time. Yeah, both decks sort of countering other popular decks that are out there, but it just so happens that Bernardo's counters also counters Julian's. Which makes it a really kind of awkward poor spot. And then
coupled with the sort of poor variance on Julian's side,
Right.
it just meant that Bernardo was able to just kind of ease his way through round 13. So, yeah, congratulations to him for being able to take this series 2-0.
Yeah, and to be honest, I'd like to see Julian again at some point in the tournament if he can scrape a couple wins together, because he is playing it in a different way to even other Arceus builds we've seen in the past that have been this toolbox. Throwing in not only the Aerodactyl V-Star, but also the Duraludon is something I haven't really seen before. It is even more stage ones on top of each other, and that's why things can get a little bit clustered at times, but it gives you answers to so many decks in the format.
Yeah, just things like that flying Pikachu VMAX, which we've known to just be so prevalent against some of those single prizes like those Reggies, stopping with big power, so also stopping things like the Blizzard Bind from the Regice and loads of other sort of small single prize attackers from like Lost Box. It really comes to the fore where it's kind of actually able to draw just a little bit better than what he has done, or maybe not prize some awkward variety of energies there.
Yeah, so once again, congratulations to Bernardo with his very creative deck. Going to see more Beedrill action on stream, hopefully, at some point. We have our winners interview lined up, but we're also going to cut to some caster shots.
Hello and welcome back to the Utrecht special event Pokemon Trading Card Game Tournament. My name is Ross Gilbert and I'm joined by an actual winner, Bernardo Diaz. Congratulations on your last game.
Thank you so much.
So, right, I think the big story here is your deck. Because if we go back like 6-9 months, this was a really good deck.
Yeah, that's
Saw
true.
a huge amount of play. That was a while ago. So I've got to ask, the most important question for me, why have you resurrected the deck in this meta?
So basically what I started doing as a test for this tournament, this is my first event of the season, by the way. I started picking up the decks that I had on PTCGO, like the old ones.
Okay.
And I wasn't comfortable with the results of the new decks. So I started picking up the old decks. And I picked this up again. And it was like doing okay against the meta. So I was like, okay, I'll just run with it.
I love
That's
that.
it.
That's such a cool
because
story.
the Beedrill actually has a better advantage, I think, right now than it used to, because it could deal with Mew and a few other things back then, but now it just deals with everything, like Lugia, Mew, Regigigas, right?
You're not wrong, absolutely. And we saw in game 2, you got that turn one mustard into that Beedrill.
Yeah.
Is that something you're able to do a lot with the deck? Is it that consistent?
No, the turn 1 mustard happened. That's the second time that it's happened in this tournament.
Okay, but then you see, you know, Aerodactyl coming around, being able to use the other attack. Is the other attack been useful for you today?
Yeah, it's quite good. It's okay against Lost Box, sorry, because you can use it to kill Cramorants and stuff without exposing your Arceus.
Yeah.
But overall, you don't want to use it too much, but if you can use Beedrill as a secondary attacker without the special energies, that's always nice.
That's very, very good indeed. I mean, I love seeing Beedrill come back. Like I say, it's been gone for a while. It's kind of back now. So, you know, you're talking about your matchups. Obviously, you're feeling good about Mew and Lugia because they are big Pokemon with special energy, which is exactly what Beedrill's designed for.
Yeah.
What matchups are you worried about? What do you not want to face with this deck?
Mainly Goodra. It's not that it's a terrible matchup, but it's very complicated to navigate, actually. I was actually considering playing an Escape Rope in the deck just because you can Escape Rope boss the Goodra, because I have the Charizard, so you can one-hit knock out it. But I ended up not doing it, and I think the matchup is like bad, but it's not the end of the world.
Have you played any Goodra this
yeah,
weekend?
it's actually my first round. We tied it.
Oh, that's not too bad then. If you can tie the game,
yeah,
I mean, you know, your record at this stage is looking pretty gosh darn good. You got at least a shot at top 8 in the first tournament of the season. I mean, is this your only tournament of the season, or is this you kind of getting going?
No, when I realized that no locals were coming back for a while, I was like, okay, maybe I'm not going to Worlds this time, but I'll try to make like 2 tournaments just for fun. So I decided on Utrecht and London.
Nice.
And so I came here to be with my friends, have some fun, and it's going all right. So.
It is going all right. So here's a question for kind of like, you're an old hand. I think I played you at the ECC in 2014.
2014, you were playing Flareon.
I was playing that Flareon, you were playing your Plasma deck.
Yeah,
it was a very fun game, a lovely chat. So here's my question to you then. You play here, you play at EUIC, you're clearly a fantastic player, have been for many years, right? If you get a decent chunk of points, so you're close to your invite, but you don't get the invite, do you rethink Malmo and Torino? Do they come onto the docket? Or are you just 2 tournaments and that's all I'm doing?
I might consider it, depending on the on the situation. I might consider it, but we'll see. We'll just see how it goes. Like this tournament in London, then I'll think about it.
That is a classic Pokemon TCG answer. I love it. So the last thing I want to ask, then, you already signed up for London. You're going to be going to that one. How are you prepping for post-rotation? Because obviously EUIC is very different. Scarlet and Violet comes in, we're rotating. Are you prepping for that, or is that kind of next week?
Yeah, that's a next week thing. I haven't prepared at all. Like, I've been keeping up with results and just figuring out like how matchups can go. But that's about it. Like, not really any kind of experience with the new format. I'm just glad that Lugia is getting a bit weaker because I really don't like how strong Lugia is. So yeah, kind of happy about that one.
No, that does sound pretty gosh darn good. Well, lovely to speak to you, Bernardo.
Thank
that
you.
was awesome. And stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, because we're still a long way from the final, a long way from crowning a champion. We've got a lot more awesome action for you, well, for the rest of the day, frankly.